This week, a second Rowhammer exploit. Chrome will remove the HTTPS indicator. Google is offering DDoS protection services. Intel is set to patch 2 new Meltdown and Spectre vulnerabilities. Jason Wood from Paladin Security joins us for expert commentary on non-secure healthcare data storage and sharing. So stay tuned for this episode of Hack Naked News. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show that brings you the security news each week. And despite popular belief, we do wear pants. It's Hack Naked News.
The breach was huge news at the time.
Linux monitoring tool.
List of affected devices. You can check out the link in the show notes.
Ars Technica is reporting that hackers have cracked the Nintendo Switch this week.
Tracking people's locations and stuff like that.
Figuring out where the military bases are by the United States of America. It's kind of interesting.
And not just the United States of America, as it turns out.
Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these things can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending your assets? Have you penetration tested your public assets? Start 2018 by taking a proactive approach to securing your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting at blackhillsinfosec.com and see how they can help you sleep better at night. Welcome, everyone, to Hack Naked News, episode 174 from May 22nd, 2018. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, and we are coming at you live from G-Unit Studios in lovely Rhode Island. Make sure you check out our on-demand material. Some of our previously recorded webcasts and newly recorded webcasts are available on demandsecurityweekly.com/on demand. The latest one is the state of endpoint security. If you want to hear our take in addition to some sponsors' take on the state of endpoint security, make sure you go check that out. And now, the security news for this week. Oh, great. Now there's a second remote Rowhammer exploit. In some research, Meltdown and Spectre veterans, Daniel Moritz, Michael of Graz University, their names are really complicated, I apologize. Let's just say researchers from Graz University of Technology and their team have published a paper describing NetHammer. NetHammer works without any attacker-controlled code on the target, attacking systems using uncached memory or flush instructions while handling network requests. Depending on the location, the bit flip compromises either the security and integrity of the system and the data of its users, or it can leave persistent damage on the system, as in a persistent denial of service attack. So beware of that. More Rowhammer attacks, and this time network-enabled. As the web moves towards HTTPS, Chrome will remove its secure indicator. And I know that sounds backwards, but hear me out. Back in February, Google announced its plans to label all sites accessed over regular unencrypted HTTP as not secure. Starting in July, the company has described the next change, which will make it to browsers in September. Google will stop marking HTTPS sites as secure. This means when you're going to a site and it's HTTPS, it's secure by default, I guess, which is a bad way of saying it. And HTTP sites will be marked as insecure. So they're just making it, flipping it around, basically. This fits with Google's attitude towards SSL-enabled sites, which receive higher SEO rankings in Google searches. Red Hat Linux DHCP client found vulnerable to command injection attacks. The entire exploit was actually sent out as a tweet, which I thought was pretty cool. Google security researcher has discovered a critical remote command injection vulnerability in the DHCP client implemented on Red Hat Linux systems and its derivatives like Fedora. The vulnerability is tracked as CVE 2018-1111. Could allow attackers to execute arbitrary commands with root privileges on targeted systems. Red Hat has confirmed that the vulnerability impacts Red Hat Enterprise Linux 6 and 7, and all of its customers running affected versions should update immediately as patches are available. Google's offering free DDoS protection services in the name of a free democracy. Google has rolled out a free DDoS protection platform called Project Shield to protect news sites and the free expression to defend the democratic process. The program is accepting applications from news organizations, election monitoring organizations, and individual journalists and some political organizations. A university was fined €120,000. I think is that euro or is that pounds? I'm not sure. Pounds, thank you. The University of Greenwich has been fined £120,000 or $160,000 by the Information Commissioner. The fine was for a security breach in which personal data of 19,500 students was placed online. The data included names, addresses, and date of birth, phone numbers, signatures, and in some cases, physical or mental health problems. It was uploaded, this data, onto a microsite for a training conference in 2004, which was then not secured or closed down. Kind of interesting that you would find the university in this case and not, well, maybe instead of paying a fine, they could use those funds to actually implement an information security program. But hey, those are my thoughts and opinions, and they are my own and don't necessarily reflect any of the other hosts on this show. Intel is set to patch 2 new Meltdown and Spectre vulnerabilities, and the hits just keep on coming. 2 new variants of Spectre and Meltdown side channel vulnerabilities were publicly disclosed yesterday, May 21st, impacting CPUs from multiple vendors, including Intel and ARM. The 2 vulnerabilities are CVE 2018-3640, identified as Rogue System Register Read, and CVE 2018-3639, identified as Speculative Store Bypass, could potentially enable an attacker to read arbitrary memory on a vulnerable system. So look for basically a hot mess of patches that will ensue after that if it's anything like the last 6 rounds of Spectre and Meltdown shenanigans. A high-end router company, DrayTek, admits to a 0-day in a bunch of Vigor kits. According to Bleeping Computer, DrayTek, a Taiwanese-based manufacturer of broadband CPEs, or customer premises equipment, such as routers, switchers, firewalls, and VPN devices, announced today that hackers are exploiting a 0-day vulnerability to change DNS settings on some of its routers. The company admitted to the attacks after several users reported on Twitter about finding DrayTek routers with DNS settings changed and pointing to an unknown server location at this IP address. So if you're pointing to this IP address, your router has probably been pwned. That is 38.134.121.95. Attacks use an exploit, not a backdoor, for a backdoor account or default password, and you can find a nice write-up from Bleeping Computer. To round out the news, I thought it was interesting, and I won't do this every week, but I happened to come across an article that said, this day in market history on May 22nd. iOmega, remember them, the zip drive company? Their incredible run came to an end on this day 22 years ago. iOmega Corp hit $27 per share, a gain of 2,135% over a 1-year stretch. That was 22 years ago. Unfortunately, iOmega, their bubble burst, as did a lot of other stocks in the market, and their stock had plummeted 68.1% by May 22nd, 1997. And with that, we'll take a short break, come back, and talk about healthcare data with none other than Jason Wood. IT Pro TV, binge-worthy learning for IT teams. Why is it binge-worthy? It's learning presented in an engaging and entertaining talk show format that beats voice-over PowerPoint snooze fests. Watch over 3,300 hours of content in their on-demand library on your desktop, on the go, or in the comfort of your own living room. IT Pro TV is IT training you and your team actually want to watch, which means a better return on your learning investment. Get started with IT Pro TV for teams by visiting itpro.tv/Security Weekly and start a 7-day free trial and get 30% off standard or premium IT Pro TV memberships using the code SECWeekly30. Today's determined attackers easily bypass even the most advanced network defenses. Trying to ramp up staff to detect their backdoors can cost thousands of dollars and take months, even years. With Active Countermeasures AI Hunter, we enable junior analysts to detect even the most advanced backdoors in a matter of hours. Sign up for a demo and purchase our product today by visiting activecountermeasures.com /HNN. Active countermeasures. Make every analyst a hunter. Welcome back, everyone, to Hack Naked News. If you work in IT and you want to have access to over 3,300 hours of on-demand training, check out itpro.tv /security weekly. They're accepting requests for demos of their IT team solution that allows you and your coworkers to access the training library. So make sure you check it out. Also, someone to check out is Mr. Jason Wood. And we get, for the first time, a reveal of what's behind the curtains. Behind the massage parlor curtains is going to be revealed in 3, 2, 1. Jason, go. Oh, my God. It's an office with shelves.
Everybody gets to see the Paladin Security workshop.
That was, anticlimactic.
Yeah, the massage parlor screen is at another location for a little while, so maybe it'll be back.
We can only hope, Jason.
We can only hope, huh?
So what are we talking about today, other than your background?
So today, I was reading through some of the articles this week, and an article caught my attention about healthcare workers admitting to sharing protected or healthcare data, basically, in an insecure fashion. And the article is probably not terribly shocking to anybody who's worked in security for a little while, but there's still a few points I thought were interesting to talk about here. This came from a survey that was sponsored by a secure file sharing company named Bizcom. And they were going through the healthcare industry. And some of the numbers that stood out to me that were kind of interesting. They said 87% of the survey respondents said that they had shared protected information via email. Now, later on, they go to say that most of that was internal, but they're still emailing things outside of the provider to, I'm assuming, patients or other healthcare services that need some data for a patient. They also go on and say that 1/3 of the respondents like to use services such as Google Drive, Dropbox, and Microsoft OneDrive to share this information. Now that struck out to me because, like Microsoft OneDrive, that if you have a Windows system that syncs to wherever you log in at, right? So that data could be coming down to multiple places, not just your work machine if they're using their personal Drive account to share this information. 88% of the healthcare employees, or respondents rather, said they understood the company, how to use the tools that the company provided, their employer provided, and the policies associated with it. But 10% said they just didn't bother to abide by them. And here was the one that jumped out to me the most, and this is kind of intuitive, but here it is bluntly said. And this is a quote from the article. When asked why they did not use company tools or comply with company policies, respondents across industries, so not just healthcare, agreed complexity was the biggest challenge. In fact, when deciding how to send sensitive documents, 60% said they simply do whatever is easiest.
Well, and I think this is a great opportunity to talk about how good IT means an improvement in your security program and an improvement in the overall security of your organization. If your IT department is not providing the services that users require and is easy to use and easy to implement for your users, they are going to go off to some cloud service, some SaaS solution, and they're going to find an easy-to-use, low-cost solution for them. And this is the battle that we've had, with IT, especially in the past, 5 or 10 years. They've really had to step up their game because remember back in the day, you'd get like a file share and like that's how you'd share files. Well, now today's cloud world, like anyone can spin up Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, whatever it is. And it's either you get a corporate account and implement that, or you better make sure that whatever you have internally is just as easy or easier to use than what's available out on the public market. And I think this is one reason why we're seeing a lot of these data leaks. We're seeing a lot of insecure sharing and leaking sensitive information through these means, because they're going to central IT and they're like, oh yeah, you want to share a file, it's like 2 weeks and you got to make sure you fill out all the right paperwork and blah blah blah. That's no longer
2 weeks
fun,
if you're lucky,
right? And it's similar to we were talking about yesterday on Application Security Weekly, where developers would go to IT and say, I need some servers, I need some VMs. And it's the same thing. Like, you got to fill out the paperwork, and you might have to wait weeks or months to get your servers provisioned. Now with containers, they can just spin them up. So you better get on the bandwagon, because people are going to be doing it.
Yeah, and you really went right where I was thinking with this article. First, right, this is not a surprise from the idea that people do this sort of thing. It's certainly something I have seen in my, career, and it's not limited to just healthcare. I remember, to your point about providing services to your employees, I did some work at one time it was a healthcare related organization actually, and they found that people were using Box, their personal accounts, to share information. And to the credit of this organization, they looked at Box, they went through and they set up a commercial enterprise account with them. Yep. They had all their legal documentation for HIPAA in place and the controls in place to protect that data, so that they could have some input on this and how it was used, and rolled that out to their employees, because then they got the functionality they needed, that they wanted, without it being a massive headache all the time. So I thought that was a good example of somebody recognizing, hey, we've got a problem here, and so instead of trying to put a stop to this, let's just supplant it with the same tool, but now in a way that we can help protect our data and put some controls in place.
And I found largely, Jason, that many of these cloud providers have commercial accounts, and it's nice because we're small enough where I can get out ahead of that and be like, use this technology, use that technology, and then if we like it, we'll get the corporate, version of it if we need that level of features or want to maintain that level of control. And so I think it really represents the kind of changing role, an evolution of our role as IT security professionals, where it's not going to be so much about like, how do I secure the OS? How do I do configuration management? How do I make sure this application is secure and doing source code audits right? It's going to be, how do we have the appropriate level of controls on our G Suite account, on LastPass, on Box, and make sure that we have systems that are interfacing with those systems and doing the same things in the name of security, right? Like, there are still the fundamental security principles there. The execution of that is different. It's on someone else's computer now, right? Which, we can debate whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, and depends on the situation. But it's basically all the stuff's on other people's computers now.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that, Paul, you cite the Security Weekly as an example here, and I do the same thing. As I'm looking at cloud services and utilizing some of these solutions that are out there, you get some pretty cool functionality, and you don't have to go and drop a 5-figure or greater check to get it implemented in your organization. You purchase it. You configure, some controls around it, like multi-factor authentication and some this, that, and the other, and there you go. You're up and running, and you didn't spend a ton of money. Now, it adds up over time, but still, it extends that out into even smaller organizations like ours versus somebody like, I don't know, a big hospital like Kaiser or something like that. So, so it's pretty cool with some of the flexibility that's there. That we have available to us, and we need to be able to share information. One of the things that you look at with like healthcare, why are they sending this data around? Well, maybe they need to send data over to the lab so that it can be analyzed, determine what this person has. Maybe the patient themselves needs to get this data to be used with some other doctor. So it's reasonable, it's necessary to have to share this data, but you need to provide the tools to allow that to happen. And like you said, I think this article highlights that organizations aren't doing a good job at providing these tools.
It's all about the information, to quote the great movie.
Yep. So here's some questions I thought, as I was looking at this, you can ask yourself as you run into something inside your organization, which I'm sure you have, where you've been surprised. Start asking yourself some questions about this before you start yelling at the user for doing something dumb. Why are people sending information this way versus the ways that we've provided for them, or that we want them to do this? Is there something we can do to make our tools easier to facilitate this sharing, or do we need to replace it? Do we need to look at an alternative? Some of the tools that are out there that I've been required to use, quite frankly, suck. Here I am, Mr. Security-minded individual, and you're sitting here bashing your head on the table because this thing is awful. So, look at things like that. If you hate it yourself, then maybe it's time to look at a replacement. Also, you can do some stuff on the user side, obviously, and there's lots of stories in the news out there about things going wrong where data has been shared incorrectly or been discovered on a S3 bucket or shared inappropriately via Dropbox or something like that. Use those stories as a way of communicating this to the employees and the impact that it has on the individuals. Anybody who's had a credit card popped knows that's inconvenient, to say the least, as you're trying to get things removed and stuff like that. And healthcare information is the same. If all of a sudden you get hit with a big bill because somebody used your insurance information to get healthcare, that's a real problem to the end user. So communicate that, let people understand that, but really look at how are we doing? What are we providing to our end users? I think we can provide easier mechanisms for this, and like Paul illustrated, there are services out there that make it easier for us to do this and implement and still have a pretty good level of control over that data and where it's going. Obviously, no matter how easy we make it, we probably have some folks who do something like, well, I'll just take a picture of it on my phone and send it over to them via Snapchat. But you can't fix everybody, or every situation. But we definitely can make a lot of improvements. And so I think, like I said, if you take a look at your environment, if you see things like this happening, stop and take some stock of what you're doing, the tools that are in place, and how can they be improved. And I think we make it a little bit less frustrating for the users and a little less frustrating for us.
Awesome. Jason, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this edition of Hack Naked News. We'll see you next time.